number. So a month's work for, how much are you paying for petrol right now? A little less than $1.50 or right around $1.50. A month's hard labor for $1.50. You can't get labor that cheap anywhere in the world. And of course, that's why we've mechanized every process of production and transport that we possibly could over the course of the last few decades, and that has given us enormous economic growth. When you hear about labor productivity, that doesn't mean people working longer hours and working harder. In most instances, it means people using more fuel-fed machines. Well, oil is the most economically critical of the fossil fuels because virtually all of our transport energy comes from oil. But oil is also a finite resource, as we've discovered in my country, the United States, over the course of the last century. The U.S. is where the oil industry got its start in 1859, and it's hard to imagine today. Of course, today the U.S. is by far the world's foremost oil importing country. But in the early 20th century, the U.S. was the world's biggest exporter of oil, by far. Now, oil discoveries in the U.S. hit a peak and started to decline all the way back in 1930. 40 years after, in 1970, U.S. oil production began to decline. Now, this is the template. This is what we have been seeing and will see in every oil-producing nation. And in fact, many other former oil exporters, like Indonesia and Great Britain, are now oil importing nations. Actual world oil discoveries have been declining since about 1964. So it's not just a couple of years bad luck. This is a long-standing trend. Actual world oil production has been stagnant since 2005. Now, if you add in some other liquid fuels like biofuels and propane, butane, and so on, you can see a little uptick on this graph. But if we're just talking about regular old conventional crude oil, the stuff that made the economy go in the 20th century, we seem to be stuck in neutral. Well, why is that? It's because the oil industry itself is changing. Back in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, it was the days of the Beverly Hillbillies. We could find oil in onshore areas and enormous pools in the ground. It was relatively cheap to drill for the stuff. And the amount of energy that we got back for every unit of energy that we invested in exploration and production was enormous, something on the rate of 50 to 100 to 1 energy profit ratio. I think the battery in my clicker is starting to go. Uh-oh, this is not good. Okay, here we go. So this is what the oil industry looks like today. Drilling in a mile or two of ocean water, where a single exploratory well can cost $500 million and still come up dry. Other new sources of oil include tar sands in Canada or tight reservoirs in North Dakota. Yes, there's more oil there. We're not about to run out of oil, but we've been extracting it using the low-hanging fruit principle. So we get the cheapest, best, and easiest stuff first and leave the